very quick recap of what we've covered this morning. Treatment plan. We're starting with an initial session, obviously, and getting the idea of the length of treatment. Principal objective is to build trust, create a realistic level of expectations during treatment. We're looking for some easy wins, in other words, setting targets that are going to be easily attained, which creates confidence from the client. And very importantly, we're trying to get further information and understand more of the background around the client's issues. Now, we're looking at approximately 5 sessions for this particular, we'll call it just a generalized issue. But the typical treatment plan is going to be around that area, and the first session really is all about trust building. By the second session, the client's coming in, sitting down, talking, and hopefully they've already attained some of the victories that are going to make a bit of a difference to them. But they're generalized victories, getting them into a little bit more exercise, getting them to eat a more sensible diet, helping them maybe get a little bit of sleep. Now, that second session allows us then to start thinking about addressing very directly the issue. So the example we used earlier was crossing bridges, or fear of flying would be another one. Then we can directly approach that issue. So you're going to get on that plane, having dialed down the anxiety. As you walk along the gantry, step into the plane, you're feeling relaxed, you're feeling in control. You move to your seat number, and as you settle down into that seat number, you're feeling great about being on that plane. These are very, very direct suggestions, and while they're very powerful for a short period of time, they're certainly not addressing the underlying issue. But for the sake of getting them on a plane, or for the sake of just getting past the first stage of this issue, that's going to work nicely to approach very directly in the second session. By the third session, we're beginning to identify the underlying issues. Now, very likely the underlying issues are to do with a generalized anxiety situation, and we can start putting some flesh on that. Now remember, you've had half an hour of pre-talk here, another half hour pre-talk here, about half an hour of pre-talk here, so you've got an hour and a half of data which is beginning to feed into the system. And we do know that by the time your pre-talk here is going on, the stories you heard here may well have changed radically, because the person now begins to trust you, you can get a lot more information. You're probably actually getting really valuable information by session 3. It's possible we might use that session for regression, to start really mapping out the path of their life, or mapping the client, as we sometimes describe it. And at this point, we can really start working on the underlying issues, which are more generalized, but likely to be the real core of what's going on for this individual. Session 4, either regression or maybe reinforcing the direct suggestion. And session 5, we're looking at maintaining their healthy approach, having worked on the underlying issues, and then we look at monitoring their progress as we go ahead. So that gives us a quick recap on this morning's stuff as far as treatment plans go. Now we're going to go quickly to this image of identifying types of disease and how they work. And as I explained, this is sort of Hahnemann's approach. So this goes back to homeopathy, but it's very, very valuable in hypnotherapy. And that is to say, you can look at a child who has colic. Later on in life, they have perhaps serious acne. At 22, they maybe develop jaundice because there's a liver issue of some sort going on. It might be an incident. Later, they may have eczema. The same person may have cirrhosis. As they get older, they have issues with the heart. And ultimately, they have a brain issue. And this is a fictitious situation, but not uncommon. A brain issue of some sort could be Alzheimer's, or it could be brain cancer or something like that. Now, under the Hahnemann model, this is all the same disease. What's happening is it's manifesting in different expressions, but it's still all the same disease. What's happening is we've got a digestive issue here. At this point, it's more dermatological. It's becoming spots, acne, whatever else. Here, eczema, it's more systemic. By the time we're looking at jaundice, we're looking at livers and kidneys, cirrhosis of the liver, very, very much more into the body. Heart, we're getting very, very inside. And up here, the brain issue is the culminating expression of that disease. Now this is a physical example, but you can equally find progressions of this sort in mental health. You can even look at some examples where it is physical and mental. So it's a physical expression and it's also a mental health issue. So that's our little image of disease, or it's just a representative way of looking and understanding the way some types of disease can work, and it may be fair to say all disease even, I don't know. But what we have to think of is these are acute expressions, but the underlying chronic disease, we're probably looking at an underlying chronic situation of anxiety or an underlying chronic illness of some sort, which just finds its expression in these acute methods. We talked this morning about putting a stop loss on worry, we talked about counselling, and we talked Dale Carnegie's great book, Stop Worrying and Start Living. The idea of a stop loss on worry. So you allow a certain amount of worry, but only so much. At that point you cut it off. And the idea of placing proportionate amounts of worry. You've got the son who's suddenly developed a drug habit. You've got the car which has got a little bit of a knock in the engine. And you've got the ex-wife who's just disappeared with your lawyer. Now, when you think about those different problems, each one of them has a different level of worry. There's no point worrying about that car more than you worry about your son. That's completely disproportionate. So you've got one which you place an amount of worry on, and you have another which you place a proportional amount of worry. You then say, okay, how many hours do we want to worry a day? 2 hours, 1 hour, whatever. Okay, well the big thing, that's going to take the majority of that time. The small thing, we're going to place there within that same hour. Okay, well if you start worrying more than the allotted time, well that's a complete waste of space, waste of time. Now what we're doing here is just getting the client to think about how they process worry, and even the process of thinking about that helps them reduce their worry. So that's that. Now we've spoken before about emotional and physical suggestibility. We've talked about emotionals who speak directly and listen indirectly, physicals who speak indirectly and listen directly. And for these purposes, we think of directly as being literally. Be careful with these labels. We're always careful. Just because someone is described as emotional, that doesn't necessarily mean the same as the textbook or the dictionary definition of an emotional individual. These are Kapus's uses of the frames emotional, physical. We've talked about the indicators where we're looking for brand names, open posture, contrasting colors, and eye contact. These are all indicators of a physical nature. If someone has 2 out of 4, well, they're probably in the middle. And these are observational indicators rather than asking the person. So you can get a pretty clear idea where they're at, what their personality type is, by seeing how they fit with those particular indicators. Where else? What else have we got going on? I think that's probably, for the moment, enough of the recap. Any questions so far? Nope. You're very, very quietly not letting yourself get on video. Should I just bring it round to show you? Okay. Let me turn the video.